Hello everyone, lovely to have you for my oil painting demonstration tonight. I'm looking and exploring a wintry scene, Yorkshire hills. We've got some lovely frost and snow on the foreground and the road. I'm really excited painting some of the frosty trees with some cool colors and some lovely morning sunshine, the warmth of it. I really like the composition, quite traditional, with a low horizon line for the foreground. We've got quite a bulky, big chunk of a tree with a smaller, dark trunk of another tree, which is almost creating an arch framing the picture. Is quite exciting. And I love the focus on the group of trees in the middle, and the little fence and another tree somewhere at the back. So let's explore some of these elements and get going. So I have a range of paints in front of me. I've got some white, cadmium yellow, ochre, magenta, violet, ultramarine, a couple of other blues, phthalo blue and cobalt blue, blue and gray, and Prussian blue. So let's explore some of the warm and cool colors, starting with a sketch. I want to get going probably with my Prussian blue, and starting with maybe some of the darker tones to offset my composition. So as I said, I'm going to have a low horizon line for the foreground, maybe just going a tiny bit up. It might be reflecting for a little bit, but it will become better as the paint will be drying. So I'm going to have a road coming towards me. Okay. And we'll see how this tree trunk will create that lovely, almost like an arch shape. It's, you know, the tree trunk, but mainly the branches here, how they will shape up. So I want to see the big shapes, the big silhouettes first. Okay, so that one's different layers of these branches develop. Okay, so it's in the middle, that's where it's reflecting at the moment. We'll see if that will improve. And this tree trunk. Also, the tree has a shadow. So I'm just sketching with indigo and Payne's gray. Okay, nice dark shadow at the bottom here. Nice and free. Let's have a look if some of these branches might come out a little bit more. And that one. So that's quite nice and bulky. And let's look for the tree on the right hand side. Now normally we have tree trunks much wider at the base and narrower as they go up. However, if you have a climber which goes up and up and up the tree, it usually bulks up the tree trunk higher. So that's why I have my tree trunk wider at the higher, well, kind of middle area here. Nice chunky branches here. Might even get it quickly planned as a tone to see the dynamics of it. And we've got loads of undergrowth here. Get that snowy path, probably the car tires worn out some of the That's snow. The fence. And then the road is going up. And let's find this group of trees. I might keep this tree a little bit lower. So then these exciting branches not going to be overly interrupted. And also, let's get this hedge below the tree slightly more dark. Again, I'm looking for shapes. There's another little tree, silhouette of it at the back. And my main tree is going to be here. Okay. Group of branches, of trunks. Now I'm using the gray background. So the, okay, that's even more. Okay, maybe even higher. Let's see. I'm using the gray background today, so it will support all kind of the silver look of the branches, of that crispy atmosphere. Okay, we've got another tree.
Julie, I just had a question.
Yes.
This is Gabrielle. So the gray background, is that acrylic?
Yes. I tend to do all the backgrounds in acrylic.
Acrylic, yeah,
that's dry. Yeah. It's nice and easy to dry. It's easy to apply and change and amend color. So for my canvases, for my boards, for any scale, I tend to use acrylics. Much more versatile, quick medium. Also acrylic creates a lovely layer. So it doesn't absorb too much paint. If you just use white emulsion for oil painting, for example, with color, it will be quite chalky surface and it will be absorbing quite a lot of paint. The colors will stay matte. When acrylics, because of the acrylic nature of it, plasticky nature of it, it's almost like a PVA glue, gives that smooth and less absorbing surface.
Yeah, so it's impermeable. Yeah.
So quite good.
Yeah, that's helpful because I'm not really an expert with oil color, with oil painting. So that's good to know that you can mix can use acrylic and paint over with oil.
I had few people by accident were priming their boards in oils with oil painting. It was fine, but quite often it will be quite a textured surface. It's quite hard to get maybe an even tone. It's quite patchy, comes out, and also it takes forever to dry. So that's a tricky part of it. Right, so I have got my main outlines and I'm ready to apply some of the tones. Now, if I were to analyze my photograph, the sky and kind of gaps behind the trees are going to stay light. Then probably all the trees in the center and the snow, kind of all the frosty areas here, will be almost my medium tone, probably the tone of the gray, maybe not the same color, but the tone of it. And then the two trees, maybe some of the shadows, but mainly the two trees as a framing element will be my darkest tones. So that's my key plan with the tones. Right, so I have medium size filbert brush. Quite like working with it. It's almost flat, but it has just a tiny bit of a round edge. Sometimes filbert brushes could have much more pointy round edge, but this is just a soft, gentle end. And I'm gonna work with my sky. I'm gonna start with quite light, warm colors and move into some of the cool colors. So let's make some warm colors here. I've got some white, and I'm going to pick up a dab of cadmium yellow and a dab of magenta. Now this is quite a powerful and strong color, and I want to have it much paler and much more gentler coming in. Maybe stronger, it will appear on the trees. But to start, I want something a little bit more dull. Right, against the gray, it looks quite strong, almost white-like. So I might persevere with my choice and let the colors work as the rest of the painting progresses. So let's just blob a few warm strokes between my darker tree branches, and let's work into some of the gaps. So that's going to give me an idea of light and the shapes behind my trees. Okay, there's lots of warmth going on there. And the higher I will be going, I'm gonna go gently into the bluey gray color and then into some more blues. So this is a plain area, and then anything behind the trees, I might just play with some quick strokes, edging as I'm going further. I'm going to be increasing the volume of that blue. Now it still looks quite whitish on the screen, but it does change. And then as high I'm gonna go, gonna start adding some cobalt blue. So if I were to establish some of the strengths of that sky, okay, I've got a little bit of yellow on my brush, so let's get that mixed. And I'm going to keep my darkest blue, maybe not quite all the way up. There might be a little bit of not mist, but very low, a very transparent cloud, so it gives that frosty feel to the sky if the sky is not dark blue at the top. Let's get a tiny bit of that grayish blue there. If the gray is not lightening up, tiny bit of white mixed. Now when I'm painting between the branches, I'm doing it roughly, allowing kind of the freedom to come back and do some fresh more spontaneous strokes. But sometimes certain shapes which I end up creating will stay as final shapes, so they help building up that character for the tree, for example, here. Okay, these ones are a little bit too similar in size, so let's shrink and combine those. Okay, we're gonna have a few gaps. So I started from one color, moving on to another. In this area, I'm mainly looking at one color just to establish shapes. Then I can range the color. So working out which color might be better here in the sky, or working out the silhouettes out of the two, I'm choosing the silhouettes because I can work and add the varieties of the color later on. Okay. Something happened there with branches, variety of twisted and parallel shapes coming in. I also haven't used much oil as liquid. I'm mainly going for the paint, the thickness of the paint. When I paint in between, so this tree has some leaves, and when I'm painting between the shapes of the leaves, some of the branches with foliage, I tend to create more spaces than I need to, so then I can shrink it with a darker tone. I prefer to do a little bit more than less, because they're light. It will be quite easy to paint over them. But it gives me an opportunity to play with them, to dab with them. Again, a bit more natural silhouette building. Okay. Now I can continue this stronger blue. Elsewhere, so if that blue is going here, it's also might travel semi-diagonally. Just blend it here a little bit more, and possibly bring a tiny bit more stronger of that blue somewhere here. Okay. Got some nice exciting strokes which could be created under the tree, well, under the lower, between the lower branches of the tree. Okay, I've forgotten nearly this tree here as well. That's okay. I remembered it now. Okay, a good mistake by mixing my yellow and green. I started to have, sorry, yellow and blue. I started to have more green. So I need to try to keep my brush clean and free from my greens. Let's keep it into the blues first, right? Maybe a little bit of ultramarine. Let's do some snow. Let's do a medium tone for some snow. Okay, now the snow should be darker than the sky. I just tested. Okay, maybe even a tiny bit more darker. And I might add a dab of violet to it to make it slightly more blue, a bit more into the violet side. Okay, too much white. Okay, so that's might be a little bit more lit up area. So for the lit up area, we can have a dab of cobalt blue, where we're a little bit more exposed open air without the shadows on the trees, from the trees, sorry. And then this road is going to take us to more violety, ultramarine, darker shadows. And some lovely snow settling, settled on the longer plants here. Okay, I think this tree trunk could go slightly narrower now. Got quite a lot of magical little shapes. Around its silhouette, almost as appearing and disappearing. Okay. A bit of extra warmth here on the road. And I think some similar warmth could come on some of the undergrowth here as well. Okay. Now I'm ready to start doing some of the shadows to balance it all out. And I want to keep using some of that violety blue, ultramarine violety color. And I'm going to add a small amount of Payne's Gray to it. Now that's quite dark, so I just need a lighter version. And that is going to be my overall color of the tree here in the center. So I want to paint it more as a block, although we do have loads of branches. I want to be back to it as a shape first. But I might need to stand up because it's reflecting for me, although it's not reflecting for the screen. Now I can see the shape better, that's better. So we've got a nice character building. So I'm going over some of the sections of the sky I painted. That's okay. Again, I can come back to it. There's another lovely tree. Got that lovely autumny magenta and ochre. Feel for it. Because of the light. So if I'll start with the darker version. And there is a little glow of similar color, which I'll build up from the darker and eventually go to some lighter ones. Get some light on the warmth of the morning sunshine. That's it. I can use some smaller strokes later to identify it a bit more. But I think that's the feel for it is coming through now. With a little tree in a distance. Lovely, almost golden, pinky color. Maybe a little bit more white. Okay, so that's quite nice and warm. I've got quite a lot of paint on my brush. Now let's have some of that warmth while I'm working with it. Maybe on the field at the back. So maybe I'm exaggerating some of the colors slightly to make it much more stronger impression. Okay, these, I quite like these golden strokes, but they're possibly of a wrong shape, or maybe a little bit wrong timing. Maybe they just need to come in slightly later. Okay, and any golden colors catching on our branches here. The back mainly. If anything will be at the front of the tree, that will be much more cooler shadows. Okay. Let's have some extra white. And add a little bit more extra light at the back here. And find some more gaps of light. And between some of these tree trunks. Okay, so lovely light is now starting to appear. And maybe let's leave a little bit of that warmth. Just a tiny bit more here. Right, okay, so we've got an overall mood building up. Well, let's go back to some cooler colors again. I've lost some of the darker shapes of the tree trunks on my main trees, but that's okay. I want to keep working into the main tones. Okay, that's my light here. And that's a shape. Of the tree. It's shrunk now. Let's bring it back. Yeah, I'm struggling a little bit to see because when I'm standing up, it's not reflecting. When I'm sitting down, it's hard to see. Okay, my tree trunks now. I'm working with a wider brush, but I am interested into more spontaneous strokes. So if I'll pick up a smaller brush, I might be focusing on too many details. So I want to see big shapes. That's why I'm still working with a larger brush. Okay, that's coming out from the shadow slowly. maybe a little too tall and too strong in darkness. Okay, let's work into shadows. Hold the corner back. Slightly more violet with indigo. Quite like painting shadows with a little bit more runnier oils. So then you can use a dark color, but stays a little bit more transparent. We might see some of those grays. It might run. Some branches here. So it might not be a solid. We can always make the darker tones stronger in tone, but best not to overwork it too quickly. Okay, nice and busy. Bit more round finishes to some of those branch ends. Some grasses standing out from the shadows. Track of the road. Some cooler shadows, maybe more blue if that tree had a little bit of extra violet. This corner could have a bit more stronger blue within the darks and maybe more reds within the snow. Quite like some of these branches, which is almost like semi circles going around the top of the tree. Some of the occasional leaves left. Might just exaggerate and put an extra branch further away. Okay, maybe too much there. Okay, so loads of elements, loads of shapes in progress. Okay, I need some more red here, that magenta. Just want to check that my tree is not gonna fall. There might be another tree, just a little lighter at the back. Okay. Slowly getting there. And some more ultramarine snow behind the fence, just to have a little bit of lighter chunks of color. So nice messy stage, which has a lot of potential. Need quite a bit of work, but it's much more established now. I quite like working into that kind of juiciness of the colors, working out the comparison between the warms and cools, and then identifying the details and fine-tuning the shapes. Okay, slightly lighter here. So painting some of these longer grasses was a good idea. So then placing a couple of gaps in between them creates much more natural environment for them. I can work through it with some extra light. Okay, right, and now I can move to my smaller brush. So now I have a smaller brush. Let's do a little bit more definition and a little bit more details. And let's start with some of the gaps between the trees. Let's have some of the tree trunks a little bit shrinking. I tend to not finish all the details, but move from one section to another, because I want to see the whole piece developing. So if I'll do a little bit here. Okay, this dark might be smudging. Okay. Maybe these two branches are a bit too perfectly distinctive. Maybe let them a little bit lost. Like the lovely light warmth here. So maybe it will need to remain in this area. Sometimes I'm adding the color. Sometimes I will be using the background color and just bringing it over. To shrink, let's say, some wider tree trunks here. It's a lovely net of branches. I want to have an impression of it without painting them all. The more look, the more color I find. How some of the tree trunks becoming heated with the reds and purples. Just redirecting some of these shapes. Okay. Sit a bit more. I'm still playing on the silhouettes of the trees, but I work from a little bit of light, a little bit of darkness, just to help me to see it. I'll just go for the darkness. End up with too many nets of dark strokes for the branches. I'll go too much into the light, so those highlights around, I'm losing in between tones and the beauty of that unclear and imperfect light. It's quite nice magenta on top of this tree trunk. Okay, now it doesn't want to stay. It's quite a lot of paint here, so it doesn't stay where I'm trying to place it. Now I can place some of those golden little stars, little shiny elements on from the tree behind the branches of the tree close to us. Okay, slowly something happening. Let's work with a little bit of coolness and trim some of the larger branches, give them a bit more delicate feel. And maybe a little bit of extra light, although it is a much more light area. I think that's will again create the space around the tree as the light almost surrounds it. I'm also going to add some ultramarine, more of a shadow ultramarine, slightly darker. And as planned, put some snow. Okay, these branches are dark, so maybe lighter version will work better. So over the darks, as my brush picks up more pigment, it also leaves some lighter residue. Well, not residue, a lighter paint. Okay, some of them kind of cross. I'm adding more paint with every stroke. So the paint doesn't go to the root of my brush. I can distribute it a bit more better and have a fresher color as I do that. Okay, anything else on the edges of the tree? Any more definition of some stronger, darker tones for the branches? Kind of disappear, but at the same time they do have lovely presence. A little bit. It's only small details, and sometimes we don't see them, but they are playing important role into all that volume that's sitting that wintry, lovely, beautiful, playful light. That's quite a nice lit up tree now. So I want to add some more shadows, a bit more color for these shadows. I picked up a small brush, but it doesn't always mean it's an easy one to work with, because we already have quite a lot of thick paint. Applying new color sometimes is not an easy task, because the paint, the first layer remains as the major layer, and I really need to persevere to introduce the new color on, no matter if I wanted to bring it lighter or darker. Okay, so if I want something to go over here, I need to be more persistent. Quite like that one there. Just to make the tree less perfect. Right, and the edge here. Okay, that's good. And let's bring some paler blue here. So once we've got one surface changing from another, we'll have light changing. So from a surface going that way to surface going that way to surface going that way, we might have some different tones. Now, if we're under the canopies of the trees, even though they haven't got many leaves left or any leaves left, the branches still cast shadows. We'll have less significant changes in tone, but once it's a bit more exposed, we will see much more light. I think I need a slightly wider brush, as this one doesn't want to. Doesn't want to leave any color. Okay, that's slightly thicker brush, and immediately it's much more powerful. in bringing fresh color. Some fresh, almost turquoisey blue, but cobalt blue with white against more ultramarine and violets in blue. Gives that lovely white. And I do want it to come through more at the back, doing the grasses. That's what I was trying to do earlier, but didn't have enough power in my color. Now I don't want a perfectly straight line, so maybe I just can dip that color in. Yeah, so that's gently changes how it's going through at the back. And I also will add a little bit of light, maybe behind one of the fences here before I add stronger silhouettes of that fence. Okay, that's good. And anything coming through here. Right, so flatten this area now. I can add some texture. Let's again just ignite some color. Bring some boldness of the ultramarine here. I want to place that snow in these lovely chunks. I want to have the feel of the thickness of it. That light is now becoming more exciting. What's happened here? They're a bit too similar lines. Yeah, they're not much of a shape, or a little bit too similar in its size. So let's simplify that. That looks a little bit more different. And maybe another little. Okay, and maybe some of this. That's better. A little bit too perfect lines, so I just soften part of it. So it's there, but not overly pretended. Okay, let's started doing some turning. The road is turning, got that lovely movement. Let's work a little bit more here. I've got some repetitive marks like little dots. So let's work on subdividing some of these darker tones into subspaces of blues or subtones. Okay, maybe that little gap needs to go as well, as this tree should be a little bit more here. I need to give it some support of the undergrowth. Okay, this dark blob is a little bit on its own as well. I think I could do with a little more support for it here too. Maybe some old roots, how the farmer's tractor comes and tidies things away, cleans, cuts. So we've got almost like perfect, not perfect, but a trimmed corner. Okay. So in comparison to the right-hand side tree, my left-hand side tree has more wild, much more spontaneous approach, and I like that. At least at this stage, I think it's working really well. So I'm going to keep it as it is. Any light on grasses here, maybe a little bit of snow, not over exaggerated or overpowered. Okay, it just allows to have a little conversation. That's it. Let's bring some of the darkness along the road. Going for a lot of indigo and Payne's grey for some of these shadows. Let's have a bit more definition for some of these branches. And where I had my smudges, I just painted a little bit fresher. Tiny bit more darker from original color to be sustained. So that's one option of fixing some of the branches, is painting the light around them. Just have this blend a bit more natural. Maybe some of this pale blue just going into the edge of this tree. Just exposing it a bit more. So it's losing some of the volume of its branches by seeing the sky through it. This tree trunk is finally slimming off. I'm squinting my eyes at this stage so I can see the bigger picture, where the shapes might need to link, or the opposites separate, or how they are standing against each other when I'm painting the trees at the back. Anything else is interacting or interfering, or maybe should be having more connections. I think these trees now need a little bit more attention as a group. Again, I'm going a little bit more solid and bulky on the branches. Before I can go more defined, to have that, again, impression of volume. So I'm going for an overall way how we're experiencing that tree first, and then fine-tuning any light behind it, or the width of its branches, or the effect those slender, delicate branches might create. I'm not very good at painting very defined details, but the technique will eventually give that impression. I think there might need to be a bit more golden, warm color. Let's again look at the light here first. Like I was working that area, I was working all together, yeah, in light before I fine tune the color. That's quite nice, gentle, very elegant motif of these trees. Right, let's do the fence. Might use my smaller brush again. And a little bit more Rainier paint, some indigo, some violet together, a dab of Payne's gray here. So let's work for some quirky shapes for our fence. Some of it might have unusual angles, some of it will have very dark planks of wood, and some of it will have, might have bent and it picks up a different light. This tree in front of it or at the back. Some of these silhouettes will be belonging to similar darkness of the fence, so they're going to get lost. Quite like that violety tree trunk here. Maybe it will have some sort of reference. So when we're painting character fences, we shouldn't be making them perfect. We should be making them quirky. They're old, they've been weathered, been standing there for a while, been repaired. Maybe some of the horses and cows came close and leaned on them while they've been munching on their grasses. Okay, so some of this section of the fence is now integrating with the shapes of the grass as well, which is quite good. I think I want to make this one a little bit higher. And even the tops of the fence I'm trying to make slightly darker, slightly lighter. Maybe there is some snow on top, maybe it's been shaken off. Sometimes under the trees the snow doesn't settle too much, or the frost settles more on exposed areas and not under the trees. That's maybe another part of the fence somewhere here. Break it down a little bit more here. Make it less perfect. Some darker shadows, so again, what's growing under there, bit of the depth. Let's follow it through again further. That's good. To sure about this mark now. Come back to it. Quite like some of these grays left as part of the background. Might just introduce some of the fresh gray there rather than leaving it blank. But I do like that gray, so. Let's look a little bit more at the tree here, maybe what's at the back of the fields. There might be another hedge, another fence, because they're far back. If I'll use some cooler color, let's say a bit more purpley, blue, that will give me a nice shape for the distant hedge. I think that might be going a little bit up. That does create that the field is going slightly up, but we still have enough light for these trees to sustain and to glisten. Right, cadmium yellow on its own with white against varieties of blues almost will look fluorescent lemon yellow. So I'm adding a dab of magenta to keep it in that traditional, more orangey, warm light of a winter morning. Okay, the silhouette of the tree. Keep shrinking it. Maybe it needs slightly darker tree trunk to ground it a bit more. Okay, that's a bit too much. Okay, now the whole brush is a bit mucky.
Julia, I was just wondering about your thought process for how you decide what's essential to emphasize and what
So
isn't that important to include.
Yeah, so to emphasize, you need to have some sort of contrasts. Yeah, so let's say if I want to have these trees as a focal point, or its little sub focal point, little tree at the back, I need to have something different from the other parts. So for example, these trees are very dark. These trees will stay much more full in color. Okay, so that emphasis will be in color. There will be contrast of the defined silhouettes of the tree trunks, and there will be some softness as well. Yeah, so it's combination of sharp, soft, more simplified in color, more bolder in color. If there's something slightly darker, there will be something slightly lighter. There will be coolness, there will be something warmth. Yeah. So you are constantly working with it. It might be an overall concept, but then you identifying certain small elements. You know how I was working, for example, on those tree trunks. Okay, some of the darker silhouettes, maybe let's heat them up. Let's surround it with more orangey, golden tones. Let's keep the shadows much more cooler. So you do find your way as you start painting, but the concept need to be more or less straight away in there.
But
yeah,
sorry, the trees in the middle, you haven't added the details of the branches. No. You've just added the suggestion of them.
Yes, that's right. So my main details on those from the trees and branches will stay here.
Okay.
Even I'm kind of going quite quickly through them. If I'll start counting those branches there, I'm going to lose the whole shape. I'm going to have everything too full of details, and too much attention will be, everything's going to be buzzing. Okay. So I wanted to focus on the light behind those trees. I wanted to catch that morning glow of the light. So it's enough for me to see that sharpness here. It's almost like you zoom into the camera and then the rest is staying a little bit more blur. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me how you know what to emphasize and what to
pick
make
pick an area.
Yeah.
And then you make it that way. Yeah. So if I would have said, actually, I don't want those trees to be as important, I want the fence and something else in here, maybe there will be a snowman there or something else there. Yeah. Maybe I'll kept even those tree trunks much more softer, maybe even like these ones, and maybe define some of the branches and almost framed that area, and maybe that possible snowman in there with a fence. Yeah. So depending what I want to do, if I want to put some birds in here, or if I want to, yeah, that might be slightly different again approach. But I'm really happy with these trees. I think I just need a little bit more work on my gray branches and maybe a little bit more bolder sky, and I'm almost there. But yes.
So even though in the photograph we see definition everywhere, this is you're creating your composition.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you make it, when you look at when you, let's say you went for a walk and you saw something, or even if you pick up somebody else's photograph or your photograph, you can't much remember when you took it, how you took it, what it was, there's something strikes you while you pick it. Yeah. And whatever that first decision stays with you. Yeah. And you drive it through, you kind of exaggerate it more. We don't just copy a photograph, it will become too dry and too impersonal. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with copying it, especially on a large scale. If that's what you wanted, if you wanted to dig deep into all the little details because you're happy with the photograph exactly how you wanted to. But if you wanted to have a little bit more personal approach, a little bit more, I can feel much more frost in here in comparison to the photograph. I can see much more glow, much more movement. Yeah, I can see I'm walking here, I'm breathing that fresh air, I'm excited about that light. Yes, there are loads of things about me here.
Yes,
my perception of it. You might have been there and you might have felt like, oh, this is all grim and dull and a bit wet and cold and miserable. And you might have had everything, loads of purples and loads of grays and no golden colors at all. You might have had much more, totally different atmosphere. Yeah.
Right.
So it's sometimes, yes, we go with that gut feeling, and it does come with experience, or you set yourself some key colors, right? I'm going to have all cool colors and maybe one warm. I'm going to have all warm colors and just really, really exciting something gray there. Yeah. So that will help you as a practice to create some interesting atmosphere and to know what you actually want. Yeah, and how you want it. It's easier for me to say because I've been painting for a while. But if I start working and it just doesn't go too well for me because maybe I'm deciding between different ideas, or because I have taken a break and I got excited about something else within that painting, so I end up with repainting areas. So then I need to be strict with myself and say, right, what is going to be my main key formula? What scenario? What am I trying to achieve here? Only then, yeah, it's almost like when you're writing an essay. If you've given yourself a brief and rough planning, this is going to be my main, this is going to be my almost like introduction, this is going to be my key concept, I'm going to make a conclusion altogether. So in the painting, it's very similar. Maybe the visual language is not quite the same, but the principle of it is similar. You have to have that key idea what you're doing. That makes sense. Over.
Oh yes, makes lots of sense. It's very helpful. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you explain it well. Thanks, Julia.
Right, so what I'm doing now, I'm gonna go over some of the areas where I left my gray background, and I'm just gonna bring some of the leaves here. So then this tree is not hugely black, although I can see some blues in it, and I can see a little bit of violets in it, but I also want to find a tiny bit more in between tones. So a bit of dabbling, but at the same time don't want to have too many similar dots, or I don't want to overwork it either. So maybe certain edges, or where I have a little bit of sky left, you know, between the branches, I might play with some of those spaces. It's difficult to judge when you paint, when you haven't been painting for a long time, as you, why Julia is putting the strokes here? Why did she not put it there? How did she make that mind? Sometimes it just placing a stroke and seeing what's going to happen. Sometimes, yes, it is experience. I have painted so many trees. I know roughly the volume of the gray need to be smaller than, let's say, the volume of the blacks. The certain strokes will be much more successful for these type of leaves or the other ones. Or sometimes you just go for it. You don't know if it's going to work out or not. You know, that is the key. That has to be supportive. I quite like that gray now, how it's a little bit interacting, almost like introducing the trees in the middle. Maybe I'll put some of this gray somewhere here to connect. Yeah, how it might be going through the tree here. Almost like an exciting diagonal, bringing it across. So we have lines taking us to that tree. These branches are bringing us here. And then these branches, these diagonals, all the fence leading towards that center. So subconsciously, well, I'm doing it deliberately, but those tones subconsciously will bring the viewers where I want them to be. I think I'm more or less there now. Quite like some of these lovely little dots of light. Right, I said I'm going to do a tiny bit of sky tiny bit more darker sky, maybe somewhere here. Maybe I'll scrap some of these branches, see how they work, or maybe introduce some other ones. Let's have a look. Last few stages, last few strokes here. Tiny bit more darker tone. I did want to keep some lighter tone at the top. So let's keep that lighter blue. Makes it a little bit more frostier. That's nice. I like that. I wasn't sure about leaving those branches, but I think it's okay without them. Small brush. Put a couple of more gaps. Yeah, the smaller brush doesn't quite leave the strength of the color. It just stays on the surface. And again, I keep squinting, leaning back on my chair. So I'm gaining a bit more distance. Just dab something here. That blue. And what I have spotted is tiny bit of blob against a cool blob against warm tones. So if I'll have tiny bit of tidying up, and have some fresh light. Sometimes when I'm talking through my painting, I might appear talking nonsense because there might be details I'm explaining and I might have missed out some of the key big concepts, but try to explain the main points earlier on, and then the rest is staying, how do I achieve it via nuances or how the stages develop. I quite like this light now. So I see in the last moment something is changing here as well. That's quite nice dynamic. Yeah, that's good. Well, I do find when I talk through my demonstrations, I have more time to not just talk through it for you, but talk through it for myself and question myself and give myself an opportunity to explain why I'm doing it. Sometimes just skip it if I'm painting on my own, and it comes out spontaneously, or sometimes I just go over and can't find that decision till I slow down and have that time to think. So I'm very grateful for you being with me as I'm doing my last touches here. I think that's it. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. Lovely glow of winter morning sunlight. Very excited. And within a time as well of 2 hours. So thank you very much for being with me tonight. I hope you learned a few tips and maybe
I really enjoyed that.
Excellent. Thank you so much.